This meeting is being recorded.
All right, hello everyone, good afternoon. My name is Kyle Burgess. I am the board chair with the Newmarket Chamber of Commerce and also senior employment lawyer with Minkin Employment Lawyers. Thank you for coming to this special Zoom at noon event to discuss Ontario moving to a modified step 2 of reopening. I want to begin our meeting in a good way by acknowledging the land that we live and work on. This is an important step on our path of truth and towards reconciliation, which is the work of all Canadians. I want to acknowledge that we are on the traditional territories of the Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe peoples, whose presence here continues to this day. We also would like to acknowledge this is the unceded treaty lands of the First Nations of the Williams Treaty, and thank the signatory nations respectively for sharing these lands with us. We would also like to acknowledge the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation as our closest First Nation community, and we extend the hand of partnership to them so we can live in a good way and in accordance with our treaty agreements. We are all treaty people and we all have responsibilities to the treaty agreements. I invite you to find out more about the treaty that you live on and consider not only the way that the land shows up for you, but how you can show up for the land to live in reciprocity. I would like to acknowledge our board members that are here in attendance for today, as well as our elected representatives in attendance. We have, of course, Mayor John Taylor with us. We have the Honorable Christine Elliott, who is our local MPP, as well as the Deputy Premier of Ontario and the Minister of Health, and MP Tony Van Bynen, our local MP. You will notice that the session is being recorded. We've muted your mics to ensure that we cover all necessary material, but please put any questions you have in the chat and we will get to as many of them as we can. Thank you to our guests for agreeing to share their expertise with us this afternoon. We will be hearing from them very shortly, but for now, I'd like to pass the virtual mic over to our MC for this session, the Newmarket Chamber's President CEO, Chris Emanuel. Chris.
Thank you, Kyle, and Happy New Year to everyone. We do have a jam-packed agenda today to cover in the next hour. And first of all, really appreciate all of the members joining. We also have a number of the media attending, and we have a full complement of guest speakers. So we're going to keep things moving to give everyone a sense of the timing. Our first speaker will be Minister Christine Elliott, and Minister Elliott's only able to join us for an initial 20 minutes. So we've moved her to the top of the agenda where she'll speak a bit about where we are at currently in the province of Ontario and speak to a bit about the supports that exist right now for business. We will do some questions just for Minister Elliott prior to her departure. Then we'll move on with the balance of the agenda with our Member of Parliament, Tony Van Bynen, saying a few words about the supports that are there for business as well. And Rocco Rossi, our friend at the Ontario Chamber, who's been a staunch advocate for local business throughout Ontario. Candidly, we just really wanted to bring everyone together as quick as possible with the recent lockdown that was announced in Ontario to make sure that our members had the most up-to-date information as possible. We've been fighting for you to make sure that you have both the information and the supports to be successful as a business as we try to emerge from COVID stronger than before. So without further ado, and I should note that if you do have questions throughout the session, please indicate that in the chat. Abdus Samad, who is our Director of Government Affairs and Policy, he will be curating some of the questions, identifying common themes. He'll be sharing them with me, and we'll pose those questions. So please ensure your microphones are muted. And with that being said, I'm going to hand off to Minister Elliott to say a few words about the current state of affairs and what the province is doing to support local business. Mr. Elliott.
Well, thank you very much, Chris, for your kind introduction. And hello, everyone, and Happy New Year. It is a pleasure to join you today. And I would like to extend a special thank you to, of course, Mayor Taylor, MP Tony Van Bynen, and Rocco Rossi from the Ontario Chamber of Commerce for the work that you do every day to support our local Newmarket Aurora businesses. Throughout the pandemic, our local businesses have worked hard to keep our community safe. I do want to extend my deepest appreciation to each of you for rising to the challenge and continuing to do your part to stop the spread of COVID-19. While this is certainly not the start of the year that many of us had hoped for, I do want to assure you that our government will continue to be there to support you. That's why we've introduced new financial supports like the Ontario Business Costs Rebate Program and the Ontario COVID-19 Small Business Relief Grant to help you weather this storm. We are taking an all hands on deck approach, working directly with businesses to protect against the Omicron variant as we continue to ramp up capacity to administer vaccines. I encourage you to learn more about the criteria to set up an employer-led vaccine clinic to help protect our families and our communities. I know this has been difficult, but I have always said that Newmarket has some of the best people and best businesses in Ontario. Every day, our community shows the world that the Ontario spirit, a spirit of compassion, hard work, and resilience, is alive and well. So once again, thank you for continuing to do your part to keep our community safe. Together, we will get through all of this. And I think I'm saying the same thing as you're feeling, the sooner the better. So thank you very much. And I look forward to our discussion.
Thank you, Minister Elliott. I know that some of you may have some very specific questions about provincial supports as they may relate to your business. Please feel free to put them in the chat. As noted, Abdis will be sharing those questions with me, and I'll be moderating some questions. We will just deal with the provincial portion first prior to Minister Elliott leaving, and then carry on. We'll do one larger Q&A at the end. I should also note we're joined by our treasurer, Pierre Bonhomme, who will be able to help explain some of the financial programs that exist and how one might navigate those systems towards the end of the session. And as well, a note that we will be sharing contact information and items that come out of this meeting after via email. So as we wait for some questions, and I know that they're starting to come in, Minister, I do want to pose one question that I've heard from a number of businesses, and it relates to support for business that are indirectly impacted. Recognize the provincial supports speak to those that have directly been impacted by lockdowns, but there's a lot of businesses, many of which are here. For instance, a brewer who might supply to a restaurant throughout the supply chain, many impacted businesses. Mm-hmm. Is there consideration, and if so, what will it look like to supporting those businesses that are not directly impacted by lockdown measures?
Well, certainly we're trying to support all businesses, including those who've had to close down as a result of moving into a modified step 2. But there are many others that are affected if they can only open at perhaps 50% capacity or something, even 25% in some cases. So there's some relief there. There's relief in terms of a rebate program for people to be able to get back some of their costs that have been collected over time. There's the program to allow them to get some of their energy costs covered, whether that's electricity, natural gas, propane, heating oil, whatever it happens to be. Property tax relief as well. And there's also we've changed the costs for
Leah?
As of, sorry. It's changed as a result of electricity rate relief for 21 days that's starting at 12:01 a.m. on Tuesday, January 18th. Electricity prices are going to be set 24 hours a day at the current off-peak rate of 8.2 cents per kilowatt hour, which is less than half the cost of the current on-peak rate. So that will be supporting small businesses as well as residences, recognizing that many more people are working at home these days. It also will apply to farms. So there's significant energy relief there, in addition to the other financial grants that are available.
Thank you. Are you able to expand on the process for getting new financial supports, what that's going to look like, and how the province is going to make those decisions?
Well, there is, in terms of the $10,000 grant for eligible businesses that have had to close, This information will be available very shortly. There will be a process that will be put on the website that people will know what they need to do in order to become eligible for it. And it's only available, as I said, to small businesses, people with fewer than 100 employees. But all that criteria will be set out. It will be clearly stated and people will be able to make the applications. In terms of the energy relief, that's just going to happen automatically for everyone. In terms of some of the business costs rebate program, that will be coming through in a program guide that says mid-January. So expect that will be coming very soon as well. That will set out all of the requirements and what people need to do as well. So that information will be available very soon, recognizing that it is, I know, very difficult for many businesses right now.
Are you able to, many of our businesses find themselves in the position where they're supporting kids with remote school. Do you have any information in regards to when there'll be more information about when back to school will be happening?
I know that it has been paused until January 17th. At that point, we're hopeful that we will be able to open the schools again, but it's really going to depend upon the levels of cases. And of course, we don't know the exact levels. All we have are the laboratory confirmed cases from the PCR tests, but we also know that many people have done rapid tests that don't get entered into the system. And there's a lot of people that are ill that have COVID. They're just staying at home. So we know that the community spread is far wider than what we hear about daily cases. But what we're really looking at right now is hospitalizations. That tells us what's really going on. And we are starting to see our cases increase significantly, both in terms of our hospitals as well as the intensive care units of hospitals. But with Omicron, what we're seeing is it's not so much the intensive care cases that are concerning us. It's more the general medicine beds and emergency beds, which is where most people with Omicron will end up.
Thank you. We've got a couple more minutes before you have to leave. And again, I really appreciate this. Are there any plans to make N95 masks available to businesses?
We are making them as available as the supply would allow us. So we want to make sure that we can get them, that we have to give them to people in terms of priorities. So of course, in hospitals and long-term care homes and retirement homes, we need to have them. We need to have them for schools as well. We want to have them for businesses too. We do have masks that are now being made in Ontario, which is great. We did not have that before. And so we will, as supplies allow, to have them as widely spread as possible, including to businesses.
Can you explain what's being done to support charities or how they might qualify for support available to businesses?
Well, charities would qualify for the, first of all, they'll be getting the energy relief as well. They will also be able to apply for some of the other rebates, some of the property tax and energy costs as well. So it's not as extensive, I recognize, as it is for small businesses, but charities are the lifeblood of all of our communities. And so we really want to make sure we can support them as much as possible.
Are there clearly defined metrics on which we will know this lockdown will not be extended? Has the science table articulated that? Has Cabinet decided what the decision point will be, whether this gets extended or we return to the previous stage?
It will really be on the basis of the information that we've already supplied to people. The science advisory table, I believe, is doing some more modeling, but we present it as we see it. I think that's important for the people of Ontario to be able to have the same information that we have. And we do know they did indicate that we were going to see a real spike in cases, which we are seeing, a spike in hospitalizations. Again, we're seeing, but really what we're looking at is our hospitalizations, because we don't know the exact number of cases there that exist out there because of the rapid testing, because of the fact that some people are ill. But we've said that if you have Omicron symptoms, you probably have Omicron. So please stay home for the required period of time until you're well. So I think it's the hospitalizations that we're really focusing on, and that will tell us whether we're still peaking in cases or whether the level of cases is starting to decline. Because as rapidly as it is emerging, the medical experts tell us that they expect it will rapidly decline as well. But we still need to be ready for a vast number of hospitalizations, and we are.
We've got two more questions, and then I know that you've got to depart, but then we'll carry on with the balance of the agenda. In the grocery industry, many employees are wondering if the government will step up again and support vacation days due to positive test results, COVID test results, and close contact measurements. Can you indicate if there are plans in place for that?
I'm sorry, could you just repeat the question about vacation days, did you say, Chris?
Yeah, if there's support for vacation days and it was raised by the grocery industry. We know that a local grocery store had coverage in the Toronto Star recently because they're just having trouble filling their shifts. Will there be support in that regard?
I don't believe that's been determined as yet, but it is a significant factor, so I will take that back.
And finally, mental health impacts have been exacerbated as a result of COVID. Are there plans in place to provide support to those struggling, especially in light of this lockdown?
Absolutely. We knew that we had many people in Ontario that needed help with mental health and addictions challenges even before COVID came along, and that has just made things much, much worse. And so we want to have supports available to people from anything from online support to in-person counseling support. And so we are expanding our online abilities so that people can start off with sort of baseline assistance and to understand if they need to move up a level and get into actual counseling. We're looking at expanding that further, and we're looking at expanding programs and services for children as well, because they have been badly hit not being in school for long periods of time. That affects their mental health as well as their scholastic ability. And we know that wait times for children to receive assistance are still way too long. We did increase capacity and funding for all children's mental health services by 5% so that they could hire more counselors. And we're going to continue to do that because we do know that this is another crisis that has been caused by COVID that is going to continue, unfortunately, long after the worst physical effects of COVID have been gone. So we do have our attention paid to that, and we want to make sure that anybody who needs mental health or addictions counseling can get that.
Thank you so much. And I know that your staff member, Dawn, will be hanging around for the balance of the meeting to take any notes or questions and pass those on to yourself and to liaise with those concerned businesses. The one thing I will stress, and I know Rocco Rossi is going to speak to this a bit later, as he's been a staunch advocate of also supporting businesses that have been indirectly impacted. And the one thing I'd leave you with is, and it's something that we're hearing a lot from, again, as an example, travel industry, people in the supply chain like breweries and the support industries that have been locked down, that they do not qualify for support. And I really have to stress that this is going to be critical that we find ways to support those businesses. And we'd really appeal to your consideration on that, but also in a timely fashion, because again, some businesses, it's not that different. They've been hit tremendously with respect to cash flow, and any support there is greatly appreciated. So thank you, Minister Elliott, and really appreciate you joining us for the first portion of this meeting.
It's been a great pleasure, and I hope that the rest of your discussion goes well. So thank you all very much.
Thank you. In order to keep things moving, we've got next, we're going to hear from our Member of Parliament, Tony Van Bynen, who's going to talk a bit about the supports that exist from a federal perspective and share any updates from the federal government. One thing I do want to point out is, because I know that there was a question around rapid antigen tests, we are currently waiting on our next order. We've been waiting for a number of weeks now. I know Tony is going to speak likely to their shipping more antigen tests to the provinces, but members need to know that you'll be the first to know as we receive them. you will be advised, and so that you'll be able to get them to make sure that your employees are safe. So that being said, Tony Van Bynen, our Member of Parliament for Newmarket Aurora.
Thank you very much, Chris. It's always a pleasure to join. Let me just change my view here. Okay, it's always a pleasure to join the Chamber of Commerce and to participate in discussions with our business community. It's a relationship that I've always found to be an important relationship. It is because the business community enables us to support a lot of the community activities. But since the start of the pandemic, and especially more recently, the new variant, our federal government has worked to ensure that provinces and territories have enough vaccines and booster shots for all eligible Canadians, and has also worked to expand eligibility for key support programs for Canadian workers and businesses. And as you mentioned, last week we announced that 140 million more rapid tests will be delivered to the provinces and the territories in January. And that's at least enough for 1 per week for every Canadian this month. And that builds on the more than 120 million that we provided in 2021. I'd also like to say that while the federal government procures these tests and provides them to the provinces and the territories, each province and territory is in charge of its own distribution. And we remain committed to doing what it takes to support the provinces and territories in their responsibility to deliver healthcare. And in fact, throughout this pandemic, $8 out of every $10 spent on the fight against COVID has come from the federal government, and will continue to be there for Canadians to provide help when help is needed. And that includes some of the programs that we've seen on the slide here. The local lockdown program was introduced to support small businesses whose local public health guidelines require them to cease activities, resulting in closures and revenue loss. Eligible employers may receive wage and rent subsidies from 25% to 75%, depending on their degree of revenue loss and regardless of the losses over the course of the pandemic. The Canada Recovery Hiring Program was created to help businesses hire back workers, increase hours, and create the additional jobs that Canada needs for a robust recovery. We've extended this program until May 7th, 2022 for eligible employers with current revenue losses above 10% and increasing the subsidy rate to 50%. We've introduced the Tourism Hospitality Recovery Program to provide support to an industry that's been deeply impacted since the start of the pandemic. This program provides wage and rent subsidies up to 75% to select tourism and hospitality businesses that continue to face the pandemic-related challenges. The eligibility is restricted to businesses with a current month and average 12-month revenue decline of at least 40%. And a full list of businesses that qualify for this program can be found online. The Hardest Hit Businesses Recovery Program was created to help other businesses that have faced significant losses, but do not qualify for the Tourism and Hospitality Recovery Program. So to qualify for the HHBRP, you must meet the following 2 conditions. And that is you have a 12-month average revenue drop from March 2020 to February 2021 of at least 50%, and you have a claim period revenue drop of at least 50%. Now, for support for Canadians, we created the Canadian Worker Lockdown Benefit to assist those who are unable to work because of local public health guidelines. And it provides $300 a week in income to support eligible workers. Now, this benefit is retroactive from October 2021 and is available until May 7th, 2022, and is accessible for the duration of the public health restrictions. We've extended the Canada Recovery Caregiving Benefit and the Canada Recovery Sickness Benefit until May 7th, 2022, and increased both programs by 2 weeks. These programs provide income supports for employed and self-employed Canadians in case of pandemic-related sickness, and we're committed to make the adjustments necessary to reflect Canadian needs. So if you are eligible for the CRCB, your household can receive $500 for each 1 week period. And if you're eligible for the CRSB, you receive $500 for a 1 week period. And generally that's about $450 after $50 has been withheld for taxes. But before I conclude, I want to take this opportunity to briefly remind everyone that the Canada Summer Jobs application period for employers is open until January the 25th. This program helps local employers create opportunities for youth between the ages of 15 and 30 that are seeking meaningful employment to develop and improve their skills. I encourage not-for-profits, small businesses, and public sector employers to explore this program and to apply. The program brings so much value to our local community. Across Canada, the Canada Summer Jobs Program creates about 100,000 full-time summer job opportunities for young Canadians, which is an increase of 40% from the pre-pandemic targets. So we've come a long way from where we started. All levels of government have worked together, organizations, businesses, and Canadians have stepped up. Vaccines continue to be an important player in this situation, and I urge all those who are eligible to get their first, second, and booster doses as soon as possible. Thank you once again for including me, and I appreciate our time commitments today. So I would encourage anyone who's seeking any more details on the programs that are available to support businesses and Canadians to reach out to me by email at tony.vanbynen@parle.gc.ca. And additional information is also available at www.canada.ca, and of course, through your local chamber. And Chris, I want to thank you and the chamber for all the hard work that they've done on behalf of their members throughout this challenge.
Thank you, Tony. So everyone knows, if you do have questions for Tony as it relates to federal programs, please put them in the chat. We are going to deal with the balance of the Q&A at the end of this session. We do want to make sure we hear from all speakers. And a reminder, next up will be Rocco Rossi, President and CEO of the Ontario Chamber. And then we've got Pierre Bonhomme, the Chamber of Commerce's treasurer on our board of directors, who can speak a bit more directly to some of the provincial programs, and then we'll deal with some questions from there. Jam-packed hour today, but I know lots have questions, and a lot of businesses have been impacted dramatically. And I have to say, in introducing our next speaker, Rocco Rossi, as the President and CEO of the Ontario Chamber, has been a staunch advocate for local business. It's nice to have his ear on these issues and have the local message in here amplified. And we know that many businesses are facing the same fight across Ontario. So Rocco, with that said, welcome, and look forward to hearing your update.
Thanks so much, Chris. A pleasure to be here with the Newmarket Chamber, your worship, Tony, Minister Elliott, other members. Thank you for having me. And of course, we owe Newmarket a special thank you and gratitude for providing us with our new VP of Member Services, Tracy McGregor, your former CEO. So Newmarket has a very strong voice around the table at the OCC. You can be assured of that. Look, I want to thank all levels of government, from the municipal to the provincial to the federal, for what they've done throughout the pandemic and what they need to continue to do. But let's be absolutely clear. Ontario has lost over 50,000 businesses over the course of the pandemic, despite all efforts and claims that we have your back. Companies, businesses have fallen through the cracks. Chris's point about the qualification and those who are direct versus indirect and how you qualify has been a significant issue, continues to be an issue. It's why we continue to push, and I don't want to go through all of the details, but sort of the key takeaways is make the process as simple as possible, make it as broad as possible. And we know that that has to be balanced against ensuring that this is going to those with the greatest need, because as the provincial government turned to us and said, look, we did what you asked, we tried to expand it as much as possible. And then the Auditor General slammed us and said, this ended up going to a lot of businesses that that shouldn't have. And so whenever you're trying to move at the pace of COVID, there's no question that not everything is going to go perfectly. And so we respect that, we understand that, but we also stress the point that when you're falling from the sky, no one asks for the price of the parachute. They just want to make sure that we save as many as we can. And, you know, quite frankly, despite the rise of Omicron, I remain and many remain extremely optimistic that we are close to shore. And so all the more reason that we certainly don't want any more businesses after treading water for 20 plus months to drown just 5 meters from shore. And the key right now is cash. And so, you know, Tony, big thanks on the federal side, the expansion and the expansion of the eligibility criteria and the programs for rent subsidy and wage subsidy programs, because that is cash assistance. The rebate programs provincially are great additional, but having that that small business grant program, go through more details in the next piece, is really crucial, because the other part of the help, particularly provincially, around allowing you to defer tax payments to June, was great for cash flow early in the pandemic when we thought this thing was going to be over relatively shortly. But 2 years into it, deferral of taxes is really just saying, you know, we're allowing you to accumulate more debt. And after 2 years, so many small, medium-sized businesses have accumulated significant debt just to stay afloat. And so again, we're going to continue to push to make sure that it's a grant form as opposed to deferral. And we fully expect, although no one wants to plan or really say it out loud, that much of this deferral is going to end up having to be written off, or you're going to be forcing businesses, more businesses into bankruptcy. So we're going to be watching that very carefully. Over and above that, though, all of us as consumers, and this has been another key piece that chambers across the country have been working on, as much and as welcome and as important as government supports are, at the end of the day, we as businesses don't get into business to live off government supports. We get into business because we're proud of the good or service that we provide. We're proud of our teams. We're proud of the role that we play in society, and we want the cash register to ring. And so all of us as consumers have a role to play in buying local, and can't stress that enough going forward. I know it's jam-packed and we'll have lots of questions, so I just want to leave it there, Chris.
Rocco, thank you so much, and really appreciate your tireless advocacy on this. And as well, as you rightly point out, we're fortunate to have Tracy there at the Ontario level, and I know she was on a bit earlier, but was jumping in and out with prior commitment, and she has been a crucial support on our rapid antigen program again, and more on that in the coming weeks, as hopefully we receive more to distribute to local business, because I know many of you are wrestling with short staff that are below your needs right now, with having to take time off and not being able to get tests. So uber critical, and we understand that. I'm going to have Pierre Bonhomme, chartered accountant from Chagres and Bonhomme, speak briefly about the provincial support programs that exist that came out, were announced in relation to the recent lockdown. A bit more granular than was talked about. We will again make sure we share this information. And then after Pierre speaks, we'll then open up the floor to some questions. So again, if you do have them, please drop them in the chat, and Abdus is sharing with them with me. So Pierre, I'll hand off to you, and I believe we also have a slide or two for you as well.
Oh, fantastic. I'm going to ask Tyler to stop sharing his screen for 1 second. Actually, I'm just going to take over and share my screen for a second. Can you guys all see that? The screen here?
Yes.
Okay, so there's two websites that all business owners should be familiar with. The first one is the Canada's COVID-19 Economic Plan. This basically lists every program that is available to you that the federal government is offering. Also, they have a link to the provincial and territorial support. If you click on that, you basically come down, you click on the province that you apply to, and it'll bring you directly to the Ontario page that lists all of the Ontario and provincial subsidies and grants that are available. And then basically you click on, it's almost like a waterfall system where you basically, if you don't qualify for this program, then you see if you qualify for the next one. Ontario does have some grants that pretty much almost all businesses will qualify for if you're affected by the shutdown. Same thing on the Canada site. So depending on the sector that you operate in, how you've been affected, there's so many programs available that it's hard to kind of go through every single one of them that you could be. So, and then there's individual support as well for anybody that's individuals or know anybody that's affected personally. And then for self-employed individuals as well. So it's a really, really powerful website to navigate. So you basically come in and then you kind of go, okay, under wage and hiring support, right? So if you do have employees and you're hiring people, and you're affected, then here's all of the ones that you could be qualifying for, and you kind of click through. You got to kind of figure out if your business qualifies for these, and every business is eligible in one way or the other, and you basically have to qualify. And then same thing for rent and property expenses. So the newest one that was put out is the hardest hit business recovery program. So if your revenues have dropped by 25%, you can qualify, and just know that. So kind of like with the CEWS, which was the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy that most employers with employees qualified for, the hardest hit business recovery program mirrors that if you drop by 25%. And these two aren't mutually exclusive. So if you qualify under one, you automatically qualify for the other one. Obviously, if you have rent, but you don't have employees, then you can apply for the one, not the other. You also have the job and growth fund. So different. So on top of the federal government, there's a lot of different sector specific programs that you can apply for, extending the work sharing program, highly affected sectors, the large employer emergency financial facility. So that's for people like really large businesses. And then there's additional support by sector. So if you fall into any one of these, I know I saw CPG online, so aerospace, you fall into that one. If you're agricultural, tourism, transportation, really, you really gotta, it's hard to kind of be very specific in terms of, who, on a call like this, where there's so many different business sectors, kind of go, okay, well, here's a blanket approach to them. It really is, you've got to navigate the website. And if you need support with that, obviously at the chamber, your accountant or professionals can definitely help guide you in terms of which program you can qualify for. On the Ontario side, we do have that $10,000 small business grant that has opened up, that they've expanded, and eligibility, right? So you basically take a look at your eligibility. So basically you're required to close as of the January 5th pronouncement on the lockdown. You have fewer than 100 employees, and you're eligible if you're in one of these sectors. And then you've got how to apply. Obviously, as with most of the programs, they're reactionary to how fluid the situation is. So they are providing supports. However, they now got to put the application process and the protocols to allow businesses to access that. There's always usually a delay on when these are available. Same thing with the Ontario Business Cost Rebate Program. So they're going to basically open up the applications. Minister Elliott made reference to it mid-January. So in about 8 days, that program is going to go live, and you'll be able to access those. And then there's the improving cash flows for businesses. There's a property tax credit and energy rebate that she had made reference to that has expanded. And then there's the Ontario Small Business Support Grant. That was the old one, so that's the one that has already closed. However, they will be opening up a new one for the new $10,000 that they're going to be offering. So really, it's kind of going through and navigating which one applies to you. Everybody will have different metrics. Everybody is impacted differently. So it's really, going to that website and starting the application process for the program that you apply to. And again, you can apply to more than one. So if you're doing the federal ones, you can still apply to the provincial ones. One caveat, the government doesn't give free money. So most of these grants and amounts are either a reduction of your expenses, which if you're profitable, makes you more profitable, you're paying tax on it. And the grants are income as well, and they're taxed in the year you receive them. So just be aware of that. I know a lot of my clients were surprised when we did their tax and they said, well, how come I've got to pay tax? And I said, well, you've received these grants and they're taxable. I mean, if you made money, you still got to pay tax. And the government needs that tax money to basically pay out these supports as well. So just know that that's just something that's ongoing. Any questions on that? I know it's a lot of information very quickly.
Maybe what we'll do is if there are questions, to put them in chat. I'm gonna present one to Tony Van Bynen first. Then we'll open up the floor. Can I suggest for anyone wanting to ask a question as well, you can raise your hand and we'll do our best to monitor that. Want to be conscious of time, but we've got about 20 minutes left. Thank you, Pierre, and I know there may be some very specific questions on that. So in order to open up the questions, Tony, I'm going to go first to you. There was a question about the Canada Emergency Business Account Loan Program, and those are, as you know, due to be repaid prior to the end of 2022. But as you know and appreciate, the business climate is not much better now. Have there been discussions at their caucus or at the federal level with respect to extending the repayment timeframe, or as Rocco had indicated, perhaps converting those into grants and shift from the loan?
Yeah, well, absolutely, Chris. The discussion around the CEBA program was contained in the fall economic statement, and Minister Freeland had indicated that there would be an extension. Now, the date of that extension has not yet been determined, but there is consideration and a commitment to extend beyond the current deadlines.
Thank you. And I know Claudio from Dentec had shared a comment in the chat. And actually, I'm going to put Claudio on the spot for maybe in under a minute. He's got a very valuable product, an N95 mask that can be produced locally, and he's also struggled to get the attention to have the federal and provincial governments procure his product. I think that would be a huge advantage for frontline workers. So Claudio, I'm going to put you on the spot to maybe speak for a minute about the challenges you've had, and then perhaps after this, the federal or provincial reps might be able to help you navigate that system.
Thank you, Chris and Tony. Don't know if you recall, but you visited with us a number of years ago when we were down the road. We invented as a call to action by the CDC and NIOSH, we invented a reusable N95 respirator without an exhalation valve that provides an airtight seal. And I've spoken with provincial and federal government officials during the call to action for manufacturing product in Canada. And because of the marketplace understanding and continuing to look for disposables, it wasn't taken seriously. I've continued to advise both my contacts at provincial and federally about the progress of the product. We received a large order to outfit the U.S. healthcare workers, which we've been shipping for the last 6 months. I was on a call with Tim Manning, who's in the White House. He's in charge of, on Friday with the committee, he's in charge of COVID supply chain logistics, and they recognize the need of getting all kinds of respiratory protection to workers and the public being disposable. But more importantly, they also now recognize reusable elastomeric respirators, which was not on anybody's radar prior to the October of 2020. And I've had ongoing challenges in talking with the various governments of trying to get some assistance and support from them to start producing it here. I make them in my factory in Kansas. I'm NIOSH approved, I'm Health Canada approved. We could start up pretty quickly, but now that the intensity of COVID has increased, it's a challenge. So anything that you can do to help me, sir, I'd greatly appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Claudio. And I think what we can do is have a separate discussion independently in terms of where you are at in that process and how we can give some further consideration there. So please reach out to me at tony.vanbynen@parle.gc.ca and we'll take a look at that. I do know that there are a number of approaches. And I think there's a new market business as well that has a recyclable one that's made out of pulp. I think it's pulp products. So it's great to see the innovation that we're seeing in new market, and I'd like to be able to capture that for our community.
Thank you. And I know too, one thing Claudia and I have spoke about in the past too is the critical need for these supplies, or whether it's antigen testing or vaccines, to be producing these things domestically. We saw at the beginning of COVID the challenge when the supply chain gets shut off by other countries who are prioritizing their citizens first. And so we need to do our best to make sure that we are manufacturing these types of things locally. And we're lucky to have an organization like Dentec in Newmarket that could support that. I know that there was a question from Jen Walker. I don't know if you want to maybe expand on it, or just it was more a comment on the time around and the paperwork associated with the wage subsidy, and then if anyone wanted to address that.
Hi, Chris. No, I was really just wanting to give everyone a heads up because I didn't realize our payroll provider had done that for us. I didn't realize there was additional needed, and that creates more work later to do. So I was just sharing that as a way of letting you know that CRA is checking these things, and we were just audited for that information, and it did take more time having to do it 2 years later.
No, it's a great call. And perhaps Pierre, maybe I put you on the spot. Is there any advice you can give to local business that may be wrestling with this, things that they should be doing now, especially going into the tax season, et cetera?
And I run in this all the time. Just remember, Canada, Ontario, we run on a self-assessment system. So when you file something with the government, they're basing it based on the information you're providing them. Unfortunately, with all the fraud and dishonest people, the government has to keep you honest. And it's really just, staying up to date. And I believe Ron Minkin had put it in the email, right, or in the chat that, he paid an extra $1,500 last year to make sure that they were in compliance with all the programs and what needed to be done. I understand that's not everybody can afford that, but I mean, there are resources. I know we did a couple of presentations in 2020, because that was the 2020 program on having to file that PD27 when you're filing your T4s, because the government needed to know that when you applied for this, because all they saw was a discrepancy between what you had sent in on your source deductions versus what was supposed to be paid, and they can't automatically match that number. So you had to fill in that form. You can do it electronically for any of you that hasn't done it yet through your online CRA portal for your business. So it might make it a little bit easier, and you do have to file it per period that you applied, because they need to know how much the source deductions were, how much the tax were, because you only got the deduction off the tax portion, not off the CPP and the EI, so that they could basically reconcile, okay, the reduction that you didn't pay on the reduced source deductions that you had paid when that program was available. Good thing that was a short-term program. Then they transitioned to the SUSE program, which you basically sent in the paperwork and attested to stuff going forward. So unfortunately, though, that we're still dealing with some people that didn't put in the proper forms. However, another thing just to know is the government is looking at hiring a lot of more auditors, because they do need to keep people honest. There has been, unfortunately, cases of fraud where people have been, under the CSRS, under the SUS, applying for money that they shouldn't have qualified for. So there will be, spot checks of that, and we're already seeing those starting to happen. So.
Thank you. Thank you, Pierre. Rocco, I'm going to maybe ask you to speak briefly, because I know you've had conversations with the Minister of Finance provincially and advocating for local business about these things like the businesses that are indirectly impacted in seeking support. One, are you optimistic that we'll see something? Are you hearing anything? But also in that, if it's still a bit of a black hole on whether there will be support, because I know a lot of people on this call would be in that position, who have had their revenues impact significantly, but are not a directly related business and don't qualify for support. Are there things they could be doing, should be doing, to make sure that their voice is heard, on top of, our obviously being vocal about it? But any advice, things you're hearing to those businesses?
You've hit the nail on the head, Chris. It really requires all the voices to keep coming in. So yes, we continue that conversation and pointing out where the real strains in the economy are, but they do need to hear from specific businesses as well. So I would encourage you to write. I know Tony is very responsive. And Minister Elliott is, understandably running a whole bunch of things, but through her staff, it can be forwarded to Minister of Small Business, Nina Tangri, who's going to be speaking to our Chamber Network call tomorrow. So we'll be raising this point again. They obviously point to the tax and fee deferral, and also what's happening on the energy front, which basically is going to everyone as things that they're doing. But the longer this goes, the less effective, the less substantial those things are. So we've got to keep the pressure on. But as my sainted grandmother used to tell me, God answers all prayers. Sometimes the answer is no, and I don't know that we'll get everything that we're asking for.
Thank you, Rocco. There are not any questions, I don't think, that have been answered in the chat to my understanding. One thing I do want to reiterate, and one thing we know is critical coming out of all of this is also the labor market challenges that many of you have faced. We know that the hospitality sector, the retail sector, manufacturing have really struggled to find employees. And while there are good numbers coming out from the federal government with respect to unemployment rates, the reality is there has been a tremendously impactful labor market shift. And it's going to be one thing we're going to be very focused on, and working with our federal, provincial partners to make sure that we find ways to support those local businesses that have been impacted, because it will dramatically impact your ability to meet your clients' needs, et cetera. And I'll perhaps close out with a bit of gratitude, but also to let everyone know that appreciate you being here and sharing your concerns. And it's important we hear about your stories and how you're impacted directly by the COVID shutdown and the different things that are happening to your business, because that's a narrative we need to be sharing with, again, federal, provincial, municipal levels of government. It's so important right now that you're vocal. And then we all do our best to amplify each other's message. And I know someone earlier shared how critical it is to shop local. And we've been very fortunate to partner with the Ontario Chamber through monies from the federal government on our Shop Local initiative. The town of Newmarket is here as well, who we partnered with in our Choose Newmarket campaign. And that continues. And we need to all do our best to support each other as local businesses, because we will help rise each other out of this. So Thank you, everyone, for joining today. It's greatly appreciated. A reminder that Tyler will be sharing both the recording of this meeting as well as some notes that come out of it, contact information to those participants, and really know that we're in your corner and we're going to continue fighting on your behalf, but please share your stories with us so we can amplify your voice. Thank you, everyone, and have a good week.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you all. Kyle Burgess, thank you. Good job, as usual.